Welcome back to CannaWeek, brought to you by New Frontier Data. We deliver the week's top headlines in cannabis and hear experts weigh in on the impact these stories are having on the industry. I'm your host, Heather Wickline. Before we get started, if you are loving this podcast, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review and share this episode. So in honor of it being Valentine's Day week, maybe, I am thrilled to announce that we have a great guest on today. She is the co-founder and CEO of Quim. Please welcome Cyo Nystrom. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
I have so many questions, so I'm very, very excited. And we're going to make John blush a lot. So get ready. And as always, I'm pleased to welcome back our in-house expert. He's the leader of our amazing research team, New Frontier Data's Chief Knowledge Officer, Mr. John Kagia.
Delighted to be back, Heather, and looking forward to this conversation.
Right. Well, okay. So Cyo, for people that don't know Quim, your website is fantastic, and it's definitely not coy or any kind of play on words. It is like does not pull any punches on describing your company as a self-care line for humans with vaginas and humans without vaginas who love vaginas. So that's a lot of vaginas.
Yeah, we are very vag forward here at Quim.
I love it.
I think it's high time that someone take vaginal health and sexual wellness seriously and make products with products for people with vaginas and really take their ingredients seriously and the issues that so often are very relevant and painful at times for people with vaginas. So super excited to get into it.
Yes. I mean, I just think it seems like you guys have a lot of fun too. I mean, I know that there's definitely a serious wellness part to it, but it seems like you guys kind of really let loose. So we haven't met, but I know that you, I see that you've been in the cannabis industry for a couple of years now.
Yeah.
What made you, tell us a little bit more about your background, but what made you kind of steer this way?
Yeah, of course. So I started working in the cannabis industry in late 2015. I had been working in enterprise software sales in San Francisco. I think it was a really great learning experience. I think anyone who starts their own business should, I think the two most important jobs I've ever had that prepared me for what I do now are working as a waitress and a cocktail waitress, and also working in sales. I mean, you could argue that being a cocktail waitress is also working in sales. So I, very grateful for the experience I had in tech. Also taught me that making money was important to me, which I think was not something I maybe knew growing up. I was like, oh no, I'm going to be a free thinker and a poor artist. And then I started making money and I was like, oh no, money doesn't buy happiness, but it can buy a lot of things that make your life a lot easier and more enjoyable. So that was a really important lesson to learn. Also gave me the ability to save a lot of money, which was the sort of startup egg for Quim. But I started working in cannabis for a number of reasons. My first job in the industry was working as the head of sales at Meadow, which is a tech platform that powers California cannabis. And, I wanted to get involved at that time. I felt like my type of consumer wasn't really being represented. Obviously that's changed so much in the past few years. And then, for more personal reasons, I was raised by a single mom, and my father had been incarcerated when I was 4 years old for nonviolent cannabis crimes, which is something I carried with a lot of shame and didn't really talk about until getting involved in the industry. And suddenly I realized it was actually a point of pride. It's something that helped me, I think, connect a lot more deeply with the war on drugs and the way regulations were being put in place to ensure that people who had a criminal record with nonviolent cannabis crimes were not locked out of the industry. So it was really exciting to get involved, in 2016, 2017, really getting to, I think, be a part of those legislative meetings. I went to probably 17 different public comment hearings throughout the state of California, because what you would think maybe as a software company was, an interesting use of our time. But we were responsible for building, PO, point of sale systems, and really had to have a deep understanding of track and trace, how, if delivery was going to be allowed, how much inventory can a delivery driver carry in their car? So yeah, that was really my entryway into the cannabis industry. When I started working at Meadow, I started to learn a lot more about the medicinal benefits of cannabis. I had really been a recreational consumer, had never really used topicals. And I started to learn more about all of these amazing benefits of this incredibly healing plant. And I had been dealing with, pretty persistent vaginal health problems since I was about 18 years old. I had been in a cycle of UTI yeast infection, really felt like I was at war with my sex organs. And all of the women in my family are super susceptible to UTIs, yeast infections, bacterial vaginosis, excuse me. And I had been making my own vaginal health products since I was about 23. They did not have cannabis in them. But when I started to learn about cannabis a lot, more deeply, I was like, oh, what if I included these, what if I included cannabis in the vaginal health products I'm already making? And it was really exciting.
That's amazing. Now, how did you meet your partner?
My co-founder, Rachel, she is the wind beneath my wings. There would be no Quim, without Rachel. I would still just be making these products in my kitchen and giving them to my girlfriends. Rachel and I grew up together in San Francisco. We actually played soccer in the Golden Gate Youth Rec Soccer League since we were like 6 years old. So knew each other when we were really young, and then reconnected after college. We shared some mutual friends, and I would say we're friendly and friends, but not like super close. And then after I'd been making sort of cannabis-infused vaginal health products for probably like a year and a half, I started, getting calls from girlfriends being like, hey, remember that like weird mason jar of stuff you gave me? I'm going to need a refill. And I think I always knew that I wanted to start my own company. I wasn't sure what that was going to look like. My mom's an entrepreneur, and I just, I knew that for me, that was really the end goal. And it became clear after making these products for a while, at first just for myself, that maybe all of these sort of, this ongoing war I'd been having with my own body was for a reason. And maybe, after years of talking about my vagina and getting very comfortable with it, and making products for myself in my own kitchen, that maybe I'd be able to, help more people and turn it into a business. So I approached Rachel. She had been traveling for about a year. And we were at a friend's birthday party, and we were like outside, and she was talking about what she wanted in the sort of next chapter of her career. And I just had this sort of like light bulb moment. I feel like I'd been low level looking for a co-founder for years, someone that had a complementary skill set, or complementary in that like very different. I'm a very interpersonal person. I think I have my best ideas when I'm in dialogue with someone else, and knew that I really didn't want to do it alone. And so, yeah, I heard her say this. And then like a few weeks later, I proposed this business idea to her and asked if she would want to join me on this ride, which, Rachel doesn't have a history of vaginal health issues, and Rachel is not a cannabis consumer. I mean, she takes CBD now, but at least at that time she was like, oh no, pot is not for me. But there were other elements of the business that I think she was really excited about. And yeah, so we have been working on this since like late 2016, but really launched the brand as you see it today in 2018 and started doing it full time.
That's amazing. That's such an amazing story. John, any questions for Kyle?
Well, I love that founder story, just incredible. And I love the space that you're in. It's clear that we as a society don't address vaginal health. Certainly most men have no clue. And so we should be embracing every opportunity that we can to get better educated. But to your point about, this being an issue that women tend to deal with a lot of shame just because of the way our society embraces it. I applaud you for bringing light and clearly a product that addresses this issue with cannabis to the market. I'm curious about the evolution of the mason jar to the product as we see it today. How did you kind of come up with your formulations first for yourself, and how did that evolve as you got the product to commercialization?
Yeah. So before, I even started infusing these products with cannabis, I was really out there. I call it Goldilocksing. It's like, this chair is too small, this chair is too big. How do I find something that's right for me? And frankly, Rachel would be the first person to tell you, I'm not known for my attention to detail. So I would, every batch was different. I would, the first products that I was making for myself were little tea tree suppositories. Tea tree is the first ingredient I discovered that really helped keep UTIs and yeast infections at bay. It's a very powerful antimicrobial, antibacterial, and it's also a very strong, it's a very potent plant. You want to use you need a very, very small amount of it. So it was a lot of trial and error. And when I brought Rachel in, she was like, okay, like, what's the recipe? And I was like, oh, I don't know. I just usually take whatever swag I have around the house, sort of seeds and stems, or the end of, an eighth or a quarter of weed. And I put it in the oven and I just sort of go from there. And she was just like, oh no. She was like, so we have to start at square one. I was like, yeah, I guess. I mean, I know, the general ingredients that have been really helpful for me, but, we made, probably 20 different batches of different ratios using different, a CBD heavy plant, an indica heavy plant, a sativa heavy plant, and then got our friends to test it. And really just, went off of that. And then of course, when we started to actually, take our initial formula and I wouldn't even say mass produce it. Our first batch we made in 2017, so we could still do that ourselves in a commercial kitchen. We didn't have to have a license. We had a mutual benefit corporation. These are the old days of California cannabis. So I would say there was a big shift taking it from, just my sort of Goldilocksing in the kitchen to trying to standardize a formula for us to make in small batches. And then there was another level when, 2018 came around and we had to find a co-packer, a contract manufacturer, someone who did have the licensing. And when we really had to look at, there are so many different ways to put cannabis into an MCT oil, which was our first product, Night Moves. And, do we want to use an isolate, a distillate, a rosin? There are so many different factors. And of course we had a limited capital. So, there were decisions that had to be made. And I would say, we continue to improve the process of the product and make sure that, we're protecting as many cannabinoids as possible. I think, we're starting to understand more. I feel like we know a fair amount about THC and CBD, but there are a lot of benefits of THCA and other cannabinoids. So, for us, using a broad spectrum or full spectrum approach has always been really important. And, sometimes that makes the product more expensive, but the origin of these products was to make products that were body safe and that worked well and did not have a lot of chemicals and didn't have glycerin in them. So that was, sort of the origin or sort of the trajectory. I think, early on, it became very clear that as long as our products were oil-based, we would have a limited consumer base. If you are using latex condoms or silicone toys, oil-based products are not going to be compatible. But, this was 2018, and the chemistry and product development side of the industry wasn't as advanced yet. And it took us about 2 years to develop a latex safe formula, and one that didn't have glycerin as its base. We had to do a nano emulsification. Thankfully, we've been working with Vertosa since it was actually just Harold Hahn, the scientist, and we would meet up in a parking lot and he'd give us samples. So it's been so cool to, I think, get to work with people in the industry who have been doing this, since it was just one scientist in a lab. And now Vertosa is this, amazing, very, pretty robust company that is, making nano emulsions for everyone from us to so many people in the, beverage space as well.
That's amazing. Well, moving on, unless John, you have anything else for Kaya?
Tons more, but let's move on.
I know. I'm like, we have to move on at some point. All right. Well, Benzinga.com reported Valentine's Day gives weed brands a loving boost with more lucrative years ahead. So we all know the high holiday for cannabis is 420. But as attitudes towards cannabis have been softened and consumption has become just more widely acceptable, any occasion has the potential to stimulate sales and turn a celebration into this high holiday. So John and I have spoken so much about all these value-added products like edibles and infused beverages. Cyo, a question for you is, what unique challenges or opportunities come with marketing a non-ingestible products like a topical?
Yeah, I think, as the industry evolves, I think people are starting to understand that cannabis has so many benefits beyond smoking or vaping, or taking an edible. The fact of the matter is, topicals are always going to be, a sliver of the market share. Let's say max, I would say at its peak, maybe 5% of sales will be for topicals. I would say probably more likely about 3% of sales. And probably the largest, the biggest mover in topicals is going to be, pain relief bombs, actual creams that you can use for, inflammation or injury or menstrual cramps. So already we're operating, we're in probably one of the smallest sectors in the industry, and we make, intimate products. So already the majority of people coming into dispensaries are not really looking for a product like ours. I think that's why, as we've grown as a business, it's become very clear to us that we're not a good fit for every dispensary. We also have hemp-derived CBD products that we sell in Urban Outfitters. We just launched with Madewell. We're in every Good Vibrations and Babeland store nationwide. But on both sides of the business, we're not a good fit for every shop. We're not a good fit for like a CBD kiosk in a mall where people are looking for like a quick tincture. This product requires a lot of education. I think we've learned that, the shops that sell, we're way more interested in deepening our relationships with preferred partners. So, for example, we look to have, maybe like in Los Angeles, we maybe have max 5 dispensaries, we know that the sweet flowers are always going to sell a lot more product because, those shops are curated for a more female clientele, a less price conscious clientele, and their staff, we need to work with retailers that really believe that bud tenders are there to provide a huge amount of education. And so, anytime we bring on a new retailer, we, require that the whole team do a staff training. And the first thing I do as part of that staff training is I make everyone say vagina over and over again. I don't, regardless of their gender or physical anatomy, they have to say vagina until everyone in the room can do it without laughing, because that's it's essential. And, I've had experiences before I started Quim where I'd go into a dispensary and I'd be like, what do you have for, menstrual cramps? And I would be talking to some, probably 22-year-old guy. And he's like, I don't know. He was like, well, I don't know. Here's this like really high THC weed that I like to dab. And I was like, okay, I don't really feel like you're listening to me. That's not really what I'm looking for. So yeah, I think the challenge is that these products require so much education, and we can do, we make ourselves available to do that education, in person via Zoom. We also provide them with a lot of training materials to, disperse amongst the staff. But yeah, I would say that is a challenge. It's not like a vape cartridge that sells itself, or, a high dose edible that will just sell itself. So I think that's a challenge, but it's also allowed us to, I think, have a much clearer cut go-to-market strategy. I think it's actually a lot harder to market and define your brand if you're trying to sell to everyone, and we're not.
I'd be curious to know like the ratio of, female bud tenders to male, because I know when I was in Vegas and I went to a dispensary there, I was shocked to see there was like 6 women on the floor. And I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah,
it was just a different relatable experience that I could ask them about. Like you said,
and I would actually
cramps and not feel embarrassed. And
definitely in the shops that sell Quim, I would say the bud tenders actually probably skew more female identifying. But, those are also the shops that want to carry Quim. So, I'm sure it varies store to store.
Yeah. So, John, did you have anything to add to that before I move on?
I agree that, with Kagia, that yes, the topical space is going to be a much smaller segment than many of the product categories that we see. But there's a duality there. One, if we're looking at a market that's going to be 50 to 100 billion, as it currently stands, Americans are spending $100 billion on cannabis. The US market is going to be well on its way to 50 billion plus in the next handful of years. So 3% of that is still pretty decent
Definitely.
Stream if you're well positioned and if you're well positioned for that market. I am curious about, as you think about kind of the messaging and the way you're leading in the dispensaries that you sell, based on your product line, it looks like there's broadly two pillars: the vaginal health focused side, and then the more kind of intimacy side of the product. Which of those two do you tend to lead with in the retail market, and how do you communicate those two? How those two positioned in the dispensary?
Yeah, well, I would say both of these products can be used for intimacy, for increasing sexual pleasure, and also both can be used for more medicinal applications. I think the real sort of like decision tree is, are you going to be using this product with latex condoms or silicone toys, or are you not? Because if you're not, then Night Moves, our first product, which is, still our best seller but a pretty small margin. It is, this product, it can be used. This one has tea tree in it. It also has Damiana. So this one is, but it's also an oil base. So oils can be a little bit messier. Oils are not, some people are, susceptible to, irritation with oils. This one, our latex safe serum is an aloe base. Aloe vera has a lot of really amazing benefits, not just as a lubricant, but it's pH balancing, it's naturally anti-candidal. And so we have a lot of people who use this one, not just for having sex with latex condoms, but they also, if you have a silicone diva cup or some type of menstrual cup, or, we have a lot of people who will put some on a tampon and then use it. This one, because there is a much more involved chemical process and making a nano emulsion. This one, it does have a slightly higher retail price. So I think that will, if it's a, concern around price, people will probably go for Night Moves. Something we did in 2020 is we launched 10 milliliter sizes. So we launched minis of each one, which I think has been a really strong product expansion for us, because it allows people to try these products for about $20 as opposed to, $48 or $56. And that just means, the barrier of entry is a lot lower. It also means, that just invites much higher discoverability. You can position these products sort of at the checkout counter in a dispensary, and someone will be like, "Oh, what's this? I'm curious about this." And if they try it, and like it, then they'll come back and buy the larger size. But that's been really, I think the price point of these products has, used to hinder us, because unless you really know what you're coming in for, a $50 ticket item as like an add-on, it's a much harder pill to swallow than a $20 item.
Well, that's definitely like tried and true. And, Sephora or any place that you're in, the checkout line has all the trial sizes, or, the trials, and they're not cheap, but they're kind of like, I've always wanted to try this, but I didn't know if I wanted to spend $70 on that night cream. Let me try this.
Exactly. Yeah. And then that's
amazing.
And that's, it's totally how I try out new products. It's like, I read reviews and I'm like, of course I would, but like, is the La Mer skin cream, like eye cream, is it really worth it? Well, I'll try this like $30 version. And if I really like it, I'll go back.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. Well, speaking of just, the product experience, what kind of feedback have you gotten as far as people saying this, like changed their intimacy experience, or their wellness or health?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as I'm sure you both understand, running a product company, we're a small team, a small product company in a really rapidly developing market currently only in California. There's so many challenges, there's so many hurdles. And the thing that keeps us going is, getting in emails or testimonials from people that are like, oh my gosh, I had a hysterectomy 2 years ago, or I've been going through breast cancer and I'm on chemo and it set me into early onset menopause, or, I've had vaginismus for 10 years and have not been able to have pain-free sex. I think maybe one of my favorite reviews was actually from a gentleman who bought Night Moves for his wife. And he was like, this has changed my life. She had 5 orgasms. She hadn't had an orgasm from sex in like 10 years. We're in our 60s. Like this has completely, relit the spark in our life. And of course, not everyone, that's not everyone's experience, but it does, it gives us the stamina and that extra boost of energy that, listen, like these products, they might not be for everyone, and that's okay. But, to your point, John, there are enough people who are looking for products like these. And so the slice of the pie is big enough. And we really see that with repeat customers, people, they'll keep coming back and buying over and over again. And if their favorite shop is out, we'll get like 5 emails from them in a week. And, especially with sometimes an older demographic, you're like, use the find a retailer, feature on our site. And they're like, no. And you're like, okay, well, I'll call around for you, because, it's customers like that keep us in business.
That's amazing. That must make you guys want to cry to get a testimonial like that. Just someone saying
Definitely.
you changed their sex life. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially like someone that's, in their 60s. That's pretty life-changing.
Sure.
Well, so the infused, like we were talking about, the infused product landscape has expanded dramatically over the last few years. How would you, what kind of advice would you give to like carving out this kind of niche?
For me, I think my advice to entrepreneurs, regardless of the space and industry, is to, it's hard to run your own business. So solve a problem that you feel really passionately about, and then circulate it amongst your community and see if it has the same results. And if it does, double down, because, that is the most important thing. And I think particularly, if you're going to launch a new edible brand right now, you better have something very, very different about whether it's your, and I don't think it can't just be your packaging. It needs to be the way you're sourcing ingredients, or the balance of cannabinoids, or,
what if you have a celebrity to endorse? Because we don't see any of those.
Yeah, no, and I think, I think celebrity ambassadors, or, bringing on a celebrity to your brand can be a really strategic move. I think, one of the biggest challenges for a brand that operates in the cannabis industry is the ability to advertise. What platforms can you advertise, which leads to major challenges around brand awareness. Like the people who know Quim, they love it. But our biggest challenge right now is, how do we get 10x? How do we increase our awareness by 10x and then 50x? And a celebrity, the right celebrity ambassador, I think, can do that. I think, I've read some article about like Justin Bieber's brand of weed. I think, there are times when it doesn't resonate, because if the product's not good, it's not good. But then you look at, Seth Rogen's houseplant, and I haven't actually tried it, but I've heard, that the weed is good. And then you look at Seth Rogen and you're like, yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that guy smokes a lot of weed and he seems to be truly involved with the business. I think where it misses the mark is if a celebrity is just using their name and they don't actually care about the product, or they're not invested in the quality of the product.
100%. Well, so you're only in California. When I'm on the East Coast, when is this making its way over here?
Well, we are working on that licensing deal. We've had a number of conversations around licensing deals. For us, the ideal licensing partner is someone who can, we have a deal with them, and that will bring us not just to one state, but to 10 additional states. We've also been looking at some Canadian firms. I think, one of our sort of like strategic advantages is the fact that I think a lot of states right now probably have some type of infused intimate oil. Not a lot of states have a latex safe option. So I think that leads a lot of conversations. So hopefully, and I'm hopeful. We are working on them. I hope these things, they take a lot of time. We're a small team and we can be really nimble and be like, great, let's get this deal done next week. We'll call in all the right people. But when you're, working with a publicly traded company, it's a much larger and longer timeline. So hopefully I'm fingers crossed, within a year, I would love to see Quim products on the THC products in other states. But in the meantime, you can get our CBD products in many more retailers and directly on our website.
That's amazing.
I'm curious about that, Cyo. Talk about the difference that you're seeing in both interest growth and the type of consumer who are buying the CBD product out of the mainstream channels versus the THC infused ones in the dispensaries.
Yeah, I mean, I think CBD has been a lot, is the path to being accepted as like a mainstream, ingredient is a lot faster. The fact that, we did a big pop-up with Nordstrom last year around Valentine's Day, and they sold through their initial order in like 2 days, had to place like 5 more orders. Each one was larger in size. And I think, if you're able to see our products at a Nordstrom or an Urban Outfitters or a Madewell, it provides this sort of mainstream credibility. And I think, THC is still somewhat taboo. I mean, to sell a THC product or to get our products, you have to go into a dispensary. And I know lots of people still don't feel comfortable going into dispensaries. So I think there is maybe a broader, more mainstream appeal to the CBD products. And also CBD and THC work differently on the body. So they do have different, I would say that it's not like our CBD products are just like CBD versions of other products. They have different ingredients, they have different use cases. And I think they have really strong use cases for people with PCOS, endometriosis, people who are recovering from a vaginal birth. You probably don't want to use THC on your vagina if you're breastfeeding, like immediately after having a vaginal birth. But 6 weeks after pregnancy, or maybe even, we have a lot of people who start using these earlier, using CBD to our CBD-based products to aid in the healing process has been really powerful. So I think, obviously the biggest indicator is, do you live in a state where you can go to a dispensary? And then the second is, do you feel comfortable going into a dispensary? So those are, even just those 2 factors eliminate a huge sector of the population.
Right. Well, what are your any predictions or expectations for 2022?
Yeah, we have a lot of really exciting things happening this year. We're fundraising right now, so we're raising our official seed round. We're having some really exciting conversations. So very much looking forward to wrapping that up, so we can start deploying that capital. We have, in the next 3 months, we're launching 2 new products, and the next 6 months, an additional new product. And, pending all of our supply chain, fingers crossed for supply chain, smooth supply chain, we will hopefully be launching a 4th product this year at the end of the year. So that's really exciting to me that we are actually, getting to bring new products to market. I think this year, you can expect to see Quim in, a lot larger big box retailers. So those are hemp-derived CBD products. And we're hiring. I feel like it's a really exciting time at the business. The past 2 years, with COVID, you sort of had to hunker down, really trim the fat from the business, but that gave us a lot of clarity into, instead of, okay, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. It's like, nope, this is the most profitable part of the business. This is where we're investing our time and energy. So yeah, I'm excited about this, I think, sort of renewed laser focus.
That's amazing. Well, I'll tell you that the amount of times I've mentioned that I was going to be interviewing you, I mean, everybody was just like so excited and thought you guys were just the greatest and excited
That's
about
great
your
to
brand.
hear.
And you have a great following and a lot of people are excited about what you're doing. So it's amazing.
Awesome. I
Um,
love to hear that.
John, do you have any expectations or any hopes, dreams for 2022?
I do. I will echo your point, Heather. I've told a few people here that I'm about this interview, and they're like, and I'm in Kenya, and they're like, when can we get these products here? So we're ready for global expansion. Clearly, there'll be opportunities in Africa as well. But you know, to me, this is such a great illustration of the breadth of opportunity that cannabis socialization and normalization presents. You know, I think the faster that we are graduating from this kind of reflexive expectation of the stereotypical cannabis consumer, and that definition has evolved quite a bit. I don't think it's we are anywhere still in an ecosystem of people thinking of cannabis consumers as necessarily being the couch potato, Simpsons watching, nachos eating consumer. But even then, there's still, I think, quite a lot of stigma and a very narrow kind of breadth in the range of both products and expectations of who the cannabis consumer can be. And I think this is a perfect type of product to break those assumptions and allow consumers to start thinking really expansively, not only about the types of products that they're consuming, but the use cases of those products. You know, it kind of makes sense that you can see the direct logical leap that if cannabis helps you enjoy your food more, helps you enjoy music more, then you know it's not that much of a stretch to realize, yeah, it could actually help make your intimacy experiences. It could help elevate your intimacy experiences. And so that expanded thinking about what an elevated experience with cannabis can be across the diversity of human experience, I think is both really exciting. And I expect that that's one of the changes, one part of evolution we're going to be seeing in 2022, much richer conversations about the breadth of ways that cannabis can elevate our lives. And clearly, Quim has kind of helped expand our understanding of the opportunity it presents in the bedroom.
I completely agree. I'm very excited about this industry and, you know, the consumer demographic continuing to expand and bringing in people who, you know, a few years ago would have been like, no way, no how. And now they're like, okay, well, I'll give it a try.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Before we go, I wanted to, you know, we give our guests an opportunity to give a shout out to someone in the industry that you think is doing amazing things. So Cyo, you have the floor.
Oh my gosh, I have so many. I mean, Rosie Matteo at Matteo, you know, Communications. We've been
You're
working
the
with
second
them.
person to shout her out.
I mean,
I mean, that is
she's
impressive.
amazing, but
We
I
just
will
started doing
say,
this like 2 months ago.
but I will say, you know, sometimes the employees of these companies don't, you know, I think we look to give accolades to the founders. And I do want to give a shout out to Renee Costas, who was our first account rep there. And I mean, I can't remember the last time I was so impressed by a young person. I thought she was like 35. I think when we started working with her, she had maybe just turned 26. And she, you know, she made me believe like that PR is worth investing in. And, you know, she recently got promoted to being a VP at Matteo. And she is such a freaking rock star. I mean, of course, Rosie, you know, she's built this amazing company, but real shout out to Renee, who is a pleasure to work with and just such an asset to the team. And, you know, it's been so amazing and inspiring watching her grow over the past few years. So, yeah. And I don't think you know, people, you know, she's a woman to watch. So watch out, world. Renee's, she's going to do big things.
All right. Rock on, Renee. Well, thank you for joining us at CannaWeek, and thank you to our listeners. Please be sure again to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you really like us, leave us a 5-star review. I'm your host, Heather Wickline, and I will see you next time.